All right. Everything's up and working today. Good day. Hello, everybody. And thank you for coming by another Behind the Dice stream today. I appreciate you swinging in. Hello, Johnny. Good day. Behind the Dice is a series where we talk about Dungeons & Dragons, some of the mechanics, some of the things that I've learned I get to share over time, or answering questions and such like that. Smitty likes to starting soon. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's the Mergedworlds starting stuff, so I like to use it since it's all my D&D theme music kind of thing. I'm glad you like it. Hello, MT. And hello, Smitty. So today we're going to be talking about additions and character creations and answering the question that most modern newer role players don't know is, what the hell is a Thaco? Which is a second edition concept they've removed from 5th edition that changes some things. So I appreciate you coming by, and we're going to talk about how I roll characters in Merged World. And just in general. Hello, Miss Ashley. So yeah, today my D&D group, including Miss Ashley White, got together and re-rolled their characters that they've been playing with me for a while now, from a 5th edition to a 2nd edition character. I've given the last 6 months to a year, I want to say, trying to convert to 5th edition. Just not for me. I not knocking it, it's just not my style. I think that and very likely because I've played 2nd as long as I have. I'm just acclimated to it. But more importantly, I've homebrewed it so much that in many ways it's barely 2nd edition in some factors. So MT says, don't know how long my internet will hold out. Started playing D&D with your teenagers. Excellent. Much fun. Thanks for getting us interested. Well, I'm glad I could. I'm glad to hear they're enjoying it. Not removed from 5th edition, but it was last used in 2nd edition. Really? They got rid of it in 3 and 3.5 and 4? Wow. Well, hello, Michael. So I'm glad MT, you and your family are playing D&D. It is a ton of fun. Speaking of D&D, though, I'm going to touch on just a couple little things right up front before we get into the topics of the day. Number one, I got my little Spotify thingy. A lot of people are talking about on their socials about their top 5s and such. But as someone who posts a podcast on Spotify, I got one for that. So I had gave me some really cool information. How many new followers I got this year, how much extra minutes over like 5,000 minutes worth of video was pasted. Hello, Yuriana. You're in it. Wow. Can I call you Yuri? Or is that okay? Or is there? I have a bad habit of slipping over the L's in there. I keep wanting to just call it Yuriana, and I feel bad for that. So I got some information on that. So lots of hours were added. Some new followers. Said that of the amount of followers I have, the majority of them listen to my podcast between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., which is an interesting, kind of piece of info to get. Oh, no problem, Smitty. We'll catch you later, bud. Enjoy your homework. That's your main name, Yuri? Sweet. All right, Yuri I can go with. Excellent. I appreciate that. Just because I feel bad when I say someone's name wrong, so I always like to make sure if I'm going to shorten it or something like that, that it's okay with that, because I don't disrespect somebody's name. But yeah, got some interesting info on that. But yeah, mostly between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. So makes me wonder, do my people, my listeners, are they more third shift workers? Or do they fall asleep listening to do I have that kind of voice? Are my podcasts the kind of voice that you could fall asleep to? And is that a compliment or an insult? Like, there's a lot of things to unlayer there to figure out. But it also mentioned that there were several new countries that listened to my podcast this year that had not before. And these are people who legitimately have followed it and listened to an adequate amount to register. But I can't remember what were they? I can't remember where one of them was Israel, which was interesting. And then the other one, I think, was feel bad. I can't remember off the top of my head now, but started with an M. But it was somewhere Europe, Middle Eastern. It was interesting to see that some folks in countries that they just don't register on a daily basis, somebody might be listening to my stuff in that country. It's kind of mind-blowing there. So thank you to those of you who've been listening to it on Spotify and even iTunes. I haven't got anything from iTunes yet, but I think they do one too. Thank you for listening to it on there. If you're one of the ones who listens to it, I appreciate that. Oh, sorry. I'm very thirsty today. All right. So, Jimmy watches a lot to fall asleep. Yeah, it's just Jim's got a thing for me. I understand. Jim's one of my best friends. Jim knows that. So that was a thing. The second thing has been requested by fans of Merged Worlds for over a year now. My Merged Worlds followers and fans, a small but very loyal group, and I appreciate that, have been asking for Merged Worlds merchandise, access to some new Merged Worlds stuff, because I don't really have much in the way of Merged Worlds on merch other than just the moon, the fire moon symbol. So based on a couple specific requests from folks, I have reached out to our artist who does all the art for the channel and all the merch and everything. One of my best friends named Shadowcast. She does all my art. And talked to her about officially designing all 21 god symbols. So the symbols that you would find on the cleric's holy symbol, they would have on their flag. The design we're looking at is each one would be designed to look like a metal disc, like a coin, but their actual holy symbol that would hang from their neck. And then with like a carved or etching on it of that god's symbol. So they wouldn't be all like bright and flashy colors. They might be like black and red or something. They'll look still metallic, but they would be representative of the actual holy symbols be worn. I could, of course, have them bigger than that. I can have them like on a shirt. But I'm also here in the very near future going to be adding some smaller items that people have asked for in the store, like keychains, playing cards, things like that. Some lower cost stuff. But there's a really cool round, just die-cast metal keychain I can get that would have the image on both sides. So releasing the holy symbols as like little mini holy symbols on a keychain I thought would be. So that said, if you see in the bottom corner we have a new donation goal, that's what that's for. Once we get enough funds up to place that order with Shadow, she's gonna kind of get a touch on, because it'll take her probably a month or two to make them all. It's a lot in one order. Never ordered something quite that large from her. But that's what that says. If you notice that in the bottom corner, all donations to the channel, whether it's through any avenue, such as here or as well as on my Twitch channel, everything goes towards that now. So hopefully here in the next few months, we'll have some interestingly cool new Merged Worlds stuff for people who are interested in that kind of thing. I can give you an idea of what some of them look like here real quick. I happened to have a couple. Let's see where I put those. So, again, hypothetically, if we were to do that, there's a Merged Worlds, a Fire Moon keychain, or here would be a, this is just an example of the Draven's Dragons keychains. These would be metal, the image stamped on them as well. I feel like some keychains people were talking about. People, there's some Merged Worlds playing cards, just some different little lower costing things I could put up there. How about my special crit die? Still working on that. Still working on that. Same as I'm still working on a place that does custom shot glasses. With these things I'm showing you now, I would be getting them from a different company that does the rest of the merch on my website. So they, in this situation, they are print on demand, so I don't have to buy a minimum. I can order a keychain or a whatever, and they'll ship it to me, and then I would ship it to you. So it would probably add a couple extra days to just the shipping time, since it would come to me and then to you. But you're not paying for shipping twice. Their quotes all include their shipping, so that's cool. Now this one I'm just going to show you. I'm not putting this on the store, because it would be like $65, $70 to put it on there, and I just don't think that anybody's ever going to buy it, other than maybe me and maybe Jim. But they can also do custom shoes now. And I just made a mock set just because I thought I wanted to see what it looked like. But yeah, they would be both sides. But yeah, they're interesting shoes. But again, they're like, to get a pair would, like, with shipping and everything, be like $70. And I think, I know I might order myself a custom pair, but I don't think those would be going up on the store. But interesting to see that, you know, the companies I'm working with are offering new products, and I found a new company that has even more. So again, just a couple things I was going to touch on early on today before we start hitting our primary topic of the day. All right. So, second edition. I'd like to begin by saying that many of the things I do in second edition are variants of the basic original rules or homebrew things that over many, many years I've customized to find ways that they work best with my DMing style and my play style, and in many ways to try to make the overall process easier for players. Because there are some things, no matter what version you play D&D, there's always going to be some confusing stuff. So I grabbed one of my multiple copies of the second edition Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. They've got some wear on them, but I've got 4. Get at least one more, but I've got 4. They're not as easy to get a hold of. So I'm kind of going to go through the basics of how a second edition character is built and how it works, to show you some of the variances between second and fifth, and maybe some of the reasons why I prefer second. Some of you who've been playing fifth longer might be able to shine some more insight on why you would like fifth better, or why you think what I'm saying would be better. I definitely would love to hear both, because some of the fifth edition stuff I didn't get into that deep, so I may be missing some things that would be awesome. Like, again, I mentioned this a lot, but my favorite thing 5th edition did was the cantrips. The cantrips are awesome. Spellcasting in 2nd edition, you just suck for the first few levels. If you're a wizard. If you're a cleric, you got a little bit more versatility, but as a wizard, you just suck for several levels. So giving the ability to cast cantrips is a huge perk for them. And I'm excited to acclimate that into my 2nd edition playstyle. Rolling character stats is the exact same thing. I do roll 4d6, take the 3 highest numbers, do that 6 times. Then you do it 6 times again. And you get to choose which set of 6. You're going to get to mix and match them. You get to choose which set of 6 stats you want to use. So if one stat's clearly better than the other, most people are going to take that. But sometimes you'll take one that has a really high number and a really low number, because you really want that high number in a prime stat. So it gives you, again, just a little bit more options. And some of the stuff I'm doing, hopefully I feel that in many ways when it comes to character creation, 2nd edition has a bit more customization options. It's less general. And at the same time, negates inequalities. Maybe it's the word I'm looking for. Maybe not inequalities. We'll get to it. So, you roll the characters the same basic way. Let's take a look at a 2nd edition character sheet. So, this is the first page of a 2nd edition character sheet. Okay? Smidgety smidge here. The second page is here, but we'll worry about that in a minute. So, a lot of the stuff, consistent, you're going to be used to. You write your name, your alignment, your race, your class, your level. Then you put your name on there, and that's there because in some groups, people hand their characters into the DM at the end of every session. If for no other reason, for the DM, when writing the next session, can have some of your specific info to help customize the story a bit better to what you have. Then they have a couple things that you may not be used to. Family, race, clan, liege, patron. So this is just for depth. Family would be if you belong to a specific family name, which race, clan can kind of be the same thing. So I like to liken family to, you look at Romeo and Juliet, right? You got your Montague, you got your Capulets. That's your family. I'm a Montague. Race, clan can kind of be the same thing. Dwarves have their different types of clans. If you're an elf, that might be where you put gray elf, drow elf, depending on what type of elf you are. But basically the organization you're in because of your race. Then you have homeland, which could be the name of your kingdom, or for Mergedworlds purposes, your world you're from, right? In most of those situations, if you're coming from a custom world, I let you create the own name of the world. It doesn't matter to me. Mergedworlds has everything in it. That's not the name of it anymore. But if you want to say you came from La La Land, usually that's fine. Unless you're happening to come from the same place as someone who's already in the game, which is possible, a family member or something, then you'd have to kind of go with what already exists. Social class. Are you a noble? You know what I mean? Commoner. That's basically where you would put something like that. Status. That can be used 100 different ways. It's not important. And these things I'm listing, like family, clan, liege, patron, those things you don't have to have to play. They're just extra ways of you creating a little bit more depth for your character. Religion, of course, in there is, depending on what world you're playing. On Merge Worlds, you choose one of the gods. If there's a specific god that you choose to worship, and you don't have to. You could be, like, I'm cool with all of them, but there's not one I kind of put above others. Of course, gender, age, height, weight, hair, eyes, those are all pretty standard. Nothing to worry about there. Birth rank, and then siblings. How many siblings you got? You got 3 siblings? That means there's 4 of you. What order were you? Are you the eldest? Are you the youngest? Are you the second? Are you the third? That can matter in some situations, especially... That's little nuggets that the DM might be able to use to add a little more spice to the story that's customized for you. Appearance, you don't have to do everything, but if there's something specific, pierced ears, or just one pierced ear, pierced brow, scar on forehead, where's an eye patch, just a place where you can put something special if there's something special about your appearance. Mohawk, whatever's going on. Then there's honor, base honor, and reaction adjustment. Those are 3 things I don't use. It's a part of 2nd edition that, in my opinion, just gets drastically too technical, and really kind of is more if you have, like, you're a minion of someone. And I accidentally stepped over, I realized I skipped liege patron. So, to put that in a point of view, if, Quan, right? Seamus, their liege patron is Mercy, right? That's an easy one. Percy, liege patron is Artemis, right? That's who they work for. Kelvin, technically, is still, even though he's his own person, he's still at the temple and Mercy's in charge. So that would be the liege or patron that they work for. But honor, base honor, and reactionary adjustment, disregard them. I don't use them. I don't think I've ever written anything there. Situational daily believer. Yeah, someone who respects them all, even, right? Could be someone who hates all the gods. Occasionally, I've had someone roll an atheist D&D character. And the one time I had someone do it, they did that not from the concept that there were no gods, but that the things that we call gods are just other creatures from the extra plane who happen to be powerful. No more different than a large demon lord or something like that. Hello, Tyler. Good day, good day. So, an interesting concept. It's like, yeah, they exist, but I don't consider them gods. And was an interesting take on it. Then we got our 6 abilities: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. Exact same thing that you would expect. The big difference between 2nd and 5th that I've seen is 5th edition, you have an adjustment based on your stats. Strength is a +2 or a +3, dexterity, depending on what your number is. In 2nd edition, it breaks up that into different things. What are you talking about? Falls more in line with a warlock. That's very true. That's actually a great way to think about that. Yes. Someone who believes that, it's really just, of that long. Very cool. But yes, so strength, dex, con, int, wisdom, and charisma. I have a 7th one that I call luck. It's basically you add your 6, divide them by 6, and that's your luck stats based on your overall average of your skills. So in strength, you get hit probability. If you have a number there, depending on how high your strength is, that's a bonus to attack with standard melee weapons. Damage adjustment, that's a bonus to damage with a standard melee or with a ranged weapon that takes strength into account. The example there being a bow and a composite bow. A composite bow is designed to use... It's much harder to pull back. It's a much tighter string, and the stronger you are, the more punch you're putting into your arrow. So a composite bow gets to use the damage adjustment of strength, whereas a regular bow does not. So that's your hit. Weight allow. That's how much you can carry. And it's more of just a basic guide. I don't mess with encumbrance. Encumbrance is silly as long as you're using common sense. No, you don't have 13 long swords in your backpack. Not only would you stab yourself every time you tried to walk around, it would just be too heavy. No, you don't have an anvil in your backpack. You're not carrying an anvil around. So, at the same time, it's like light things. You do not have 1 million pieces of chalk. It's just feasibly not possible for you to carry that around. So weight allow is an example of what you can carry comfortably. Maximum press is literally what you bench press. If it says 200, you can bench press 200. So if you want to struggle to lift a rock, you say, how much does that rock weigh? I say 300. You cannot lift that rock. It is outside of your capability to lift that rock. There's no reason to roll at that point. But if it's under, then DM's discretion can say, okay, it's only a little less than that. So it only weighs 50 pounds. You can lift 200. It's no problem. You don't have to roll. You can lift 200. It weighs 190. Make a strength check, just to make sure it doesn't slip out of your hands. The next one is open doors. And that's going to have a number between 1 and 20. And that is what you have to roll under to force a door open. Oh, you're fine. No worries. So if there's a door that's locked and you want to try to bash it in with your shoulder, you want to try to kick it open, there's even a locked door, depending on what it's made out of, that's the chance you have to do it if it's possible. You walk up to me and it's a dwarven door that is made of metal and so hinged in there, I'm like, listen, a dragon couldn't kick that door down. There's no reason to do it. But if it's feasible, that's your chance of doing it. You roll a 20-sided, you roll over your number. So, for example, at 16 strength, you would be able to do it on any roll. I'm sorry, under. Read that. Any roll under a 9. And then the last one is bend bars, lift gates. That's BBLG. And that's literally what it sounds like. I'm in prison. I want to try to bend the bars to squeeze through. There's a huge gate that we can't get through to get into this castle. I want to try to lift this gate. Because it's not that it's locked down. It's just on the inside. Somebody's got a wheel thing they got to crank because it's really heavy. So, bend bars, lift gates is literally your percentage chance of doing just that. And that would normally be, again, at a 16 strength, you've got a 10%. Because not anybody can just bend a metal bar. But you're pretty strong. I mean, at 16 strength, you can bench press 195 pounds. That's an adequate amount of strength. If you think about it, if you're, depending on how strong the bar is or how well it's latched in there, there's a chance you could do that. Right? That's bend bars, lift gates. Then we have dexterity. Dexterity has 3 stats. The first one is reaction adjustment. I'm going to read that to you specifically. Modifies the die roll to see if a character is surprised when he unexpectedly encounters NPCs. The more positive the modifier, the less likely the character is to be surprised. So if you have high dexterity, you have a better chance of not being surprised. And it's not somebody jumping out and yelling boo, right? Because that can happen. It's more if someone's trying to, a trap, or someone jumps out in ambush and swings a sword. You're dexterous enough that you're able to kind of dodge it based on that. It's harder to surprise you. I think, did the chat freeze on me? Because I just got a spinny wheel there. Hang on a second. Okay, I posted test. Can anybody, if you don't mind, post something in chat just so I can see that it's working? I have a weird spinny thing next to somebody's name and Tyler's name, and I don't know if it's because it blocked. I know there's a delay, so I'll give it a second there. Before I continue, because it shows that everything's working on my end. Okay, your end is posted, so yeah, that worked. Okay, thank you, Eric. Michael, yes, as well. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I didn't break the world. So that's dexterity reaction adjustment. Thank you very much, Ashley. The next one is missile attack adjustment. This is because you're so dexterous, you have a bonus chance to do damage with any bow or thrown weapon. From a javelin, dagger to a dart, you have an added chance, just dexterity, of being more accurate. So that is purely to do with attack, though. Doesn't affect damage. Your dagger still does the same damage as a dagger. You just got a better shot of hitting somebody. And the last one is defense adjustment. That is affects your armor class. Makes your armor class, makes you harder to hit. Because the higher dexterity, the higher your adjustment is, the harder it is to hit. We're going to talk about armor class a little bit later, so I'm not going into that because armor class is handled differently than it is in 5th. Oh, that's an emoji. Okay, just making sure I did not break something. So the next one is Constitution. Hit point adjustment. It's how many extra hit points you get a level, right? So hypothetically, Constitution, you have a 16 Constitution, you get an extra 2 hit points. So if you're a warrior and you roll 1d10, you get 1d10 plus 2 for you specifically. At first level, I always give you maximum hit points. It may be that same way in 5th, I can't remember. But I don't ever bother rolling. You just get the maximum hit points you can get at first level. And then after that, you can roll your hit. You get to roll. If you don't like your roll, you may choose to re-roll once. But whatever you re-roll, you have to keep, even if it's worse than the first roll. So that's your gamble. You know, you get to roll 10-sided for hit points, and you roll a 3. You're going to choose to re-roll. You might get a 1 or a 2 and be boning yourself, but you've got a much better chance of getting a number above that. But hypothetically, you roll a 9, probably going to want to keep that. Composite bow uses dex to hit and strength for damage. That's correct. That is correct. Hello, welcome back, Talon. The next one there is System Shock. So System Shock is something I've talked about in D&D that I haven't seen in 5th edition, and that is when your body takes an extreme shock. The best example of that is when, say hypothetically, dragon breathes fire on you. If it does, 50% or more of your max hit points, not of how many you have left, but of your max hit points, you have to roll a system shock or pass out. From the concept of that's just too much pain to take at once, your body goes into shock and you faint. That happens in real life. So there's that. Resurrection survival. That's the percentage chance you have of surviving being resurrected. Someone casts a resurrection spell, Rod of Resurrection. If you're being brought back from the dead, there's a chance it might not work if your constitution's too low. Hello, Mr. Skinny Jeans. Severe wounds section. It's like 3 paragraphs. Really? It's not a whole lot. But when it comes to severe wound things like that for system shock, and it's not just that. There's magic items that can do that. Things that can drastically change your size. A girdle of masculinity, femininity changes your gender. And in no way am I saying that being the opposite gender is a bad thing. I'm not making a comment there. But if you are what you are and you're happy with that, and then suddenly you're the opposite, that's going to be a shock to the system, regardless. So you roll a system shock. But again, to give an example, if you have a 14 hit point adjustment, you got an 88% to pass system shock. It's very small. There's a lot more percentage rolls I find in 2nd edition. 50% max health is in 3 and 3.5. Okay, gotcha. This is rocket science for you. I promise. It sounds complicated, but it's very, very easy because I'm going to tell you as the DM. I'm going to be like, like the system shock. System shock's a cool thing. So it could be like, hey, something bad happens, right? Let's say here's a great example. In front of you, your beloved is killed. That is a shock to your system. Make a system shock roll. Is it so much that your body goes into default and passes out? Which can happen. Fear's another one. If you were to come across your phobia, which I love putting phobias, giving everybody a phobia, but when you walk into a phobia and it's phobia enough, there's a chance that you may have to roll a system shock or pass out, or it's up to me if you fail as the DM. You could pass out, or you could run in fear for 1d10 rounds, or whatever the case may be, the situation. Right? You may just run in fear. You may attack it barbarian style without the ability to stop, ignoring everything else around you. Even though your friends could be getting beat up by a much worse monster, you will attack that spider until that spider is dead. It just depends on the situation and what it is you're facing, of course. Let's see here. Lexus Machak, can you do a tutorial on how to watch YouTube in your Sky Factory world? How to watch YouTube? That'd be handy. After that is poison save. So that's specifically a bonus or a modifier to be more resistant to poisons. You have a very high constitution. It's harder for a poison to kill you. And then the last one is regen. If you get a high enough constitution, it is possible to have natural regeneration. You'd have to have a minimum of 20, but you'd get 1 hit point back every 10 turns, every turn. Sorry, 1 every 6 turns, which is basically 1 an hour in 2nd edition, because a turn is 10 rounds. And a round is a round of combat. So that's constitution. Intelligence, number of languages you can speak. Smarter you are, the more languages you can speak. Now, with my group today, I did a little different than I normally do, because it's their first characters and they've already got them set. Normally, you get to pick your default language, and you can read and write that language. The other languages you can only speak. If you raise your intelligence and gain another language, you can have another language. I'm fine with that. But normally, in 2nd edition, you can't automatically read and write it. You can speak it. You have to buy a reading and writing skill for each other language beyond your basic. And while common is the common tongue that hopefully every character can read, doesn't necessarily mean that's the one you can read. After that is spell level. So spell level in intelligence says this is the highest level of spell you're smart enough to cast. So for wizards, this is purely a wizard's thing. There are 1st level spells through 9th level spells, if you don't count the new cantrips. If that says 7th, you're not smart enough to cast an 8th or 9th level spell, even if you get to the level that you can cast them. So it is very common that wizards are going to, or mages of any kind, are going to seek any way they possibly can to raise their intelligence as they level. And there are ways to do it for sure. Had a character in my game roll a save when her beloved died in combat. She failed and flew into range and could only attack the one who killed. Yeah, that's a perfect example of how a system shock roll would work. Very close. So spell level, the highest level of spell you're smart enough to cast. That is wizard specific. Next is chance to learn spell. That part doesn't matter for clerics. It does not, no. Because your spells are specifically given to you by your god, and that's your abilities are more wisdom based. So it's not of whether or not you can memorize the complicated spells. Your god's giving you your spells. So yeah, the spell limitation is purely for wizards. Because to be honest, and again, I'll speak for 5th yet, because we never got that high. 2nd edition, at least, you get to a 9th level spell. There's not many priest spells that could come close to matching that in capability. There's some very powerful 7th level spells, for sure, for clerics, but very few of them are going to hit the level of wish for a 9th level wizard. Power word death, where you point at someone and say die, and then they die. That's it. They just die. You could do that to a dragon. It could die. If they're high enough, there's a chance you're just going to say die, and it dies. So it takes a lot more intelligence because you're not being given those spells. You're having to go out there and learn them yourself. But yeah, cantrips count as 0 from everything I've seen. But 2nd edition, they didn't exist, so they're technically not in the descriptions of it at all. I'm adding cantrips because, again, I do really like the cantrip idea. After that is chance to learn spell. So if you're a wizard and you find a scroll of burning hands and you don't know that spell, you can copy that spell into your spell book to learn it. You then have to do a learn spell check to see if you did it right. You get 1 shot. If you didn't, then you just don't figure it out. And that is a spell that you would never be able to have. Now, the chance to fail that, you have to have, as long as you have an intelligence of, let's see, you have a 15 intelligence. Well, I think you'll agree most wizards are going to have at least a 15 or 16 as their main stat. They're going to roll something in there. You got a 75% chance. There's also a spell called Copy that you can cast, which automatically copies it into your spell book and gives you 100%. And that's a 1st level spell I give everybody. So that stat's mostly useless at this point in the way that I play. But technically that's what it's there for. Okay. After that is spells per level. Again, wizards only. That's the maximum number of spells per level that you can learn. So if you have a 10 there, you'll never know more than 10 first level spells. You can cast other spells off of scrolls, or you can cast them if you have magic items that do that. But to actually put them in your spell book and learn them, you can never have more than 10 unless you raise your intelligence. Now, that's important, because if you have 9 and you find a spell on a scroll and you're like, ooh, this is a cool spell, but if I learn it, I never get to learn any other ones. Do I wait and see if I find a spell I'd like more? So that's the maximum level of spells. Now, again, they allow for this. Once you hit 19 intelligence, there's no limitation. So, I mean, you get your intelligence up high enough, it doesn't matter. You're smart enough, you can learn as many as you'd like. Stat in 5e has something important to do. Every stat in 5e has something important to do. I would say the same with 2nd edition. Every stat has something important to do, except for the ones I've negated myself over the years. But basically, they're originally there. And then the last one is spell immunity. And that's not one you're really going to mess with very often. Can you choose to forget a spell? No, you cannot. That's just like, I can't choose to forget algebra. But if you hit 19 level intelligence, you're immune to first level of illusions. And as it goes up, then you lose it. Rip it out of your spell. See, ripping it out of your spell book doesn't make you forget it exists. It may take up space, but I've always viewed spell casting as a very mana-like system. Technically, in 2nd edition, the original, especially 1st edition, but even the early 2nd edition stuff, when you cast a spell, it's erased from your mind until you restudy it that night, or when you have your long rest, I think is the 5th edition. Which means if you cast Magic Missile, you don't get to cast it again. You can cast it once. So every spell you have, you could cast feasibly once until you've used your spell points for the day. I don't like that. So I use a spell point system. You can cast 4 first level spells. Same one 4 times. You can cast it, you know what I mean? You can cast 4 different ones. You basically are re-memorizing or recharging your mana by rest. But you don't lose the memory from your spell by casting it. Or lose the spell from your memory by casting it. If you did, you'd only be able to cast it once. So spells per level, spell immunity, that can fall into that. But like I said, most people, mages, are going to find a way to get to 19 intelligence eventually, just to avoid that. Then we jump into wisdom. Magical defense adjustment. That's a modifier to help you be immune to saving throws. Specific ones we're going to talk about in a minute. But the magic defense adjustment gives you a defense against certain types of magic. They're so wise that it's hard for them to hit you or to work on you. Next is bonus spells. So bonus spells are for clerics specifically. And these are bonus spells. That sounds silly, but it's legit what it is. I'll give you an example. If you have a 13 level wisdom, you get a bonus first level spell that you can cast every day. So whatever level you are, if you can cast 3 first level spells, get a bonus one, you can now cast 4. Right? If you get to level 14, it says first level again. That means at 14, you get another first level. So it's cumulative. Give me an example. 13 is first level, 14th is first level, 15th is second level, 16th is second level, 17th is third level, 18th is fourth level. So if you have an 18th level wisdom, you get a bonus 4th level spell, a bonus 3rd, 2 bonus 2nd, and 2 bonus 1st. Now, you only get to use those if you're capable of casting that spell's level. So if you can only cast first level spells, you don't get to use your bonus 2nd level spell until you level up to be able to cast 2nd level spells. But normally, when you get to that point as a cleric or wizard, you now get 1 point, right? You can now cast 1 2nd level spell a day. For clerics, if you have a high enough wisdom, right out of the gate, you have more than just one. And that sounds confusing. That's one part that gets worse. Because at 19th, you get another first and a fourth. At 20th, you get a second and a fourth. At 21st, you get 23rd and a fifth. 22nd wisdom, a fourth and a fifth. So it just gets higher and higher and higher. And then starting at 19th wisdom, you're immune 100% to certain spells. 19 would be cause fear, charm person, command, friends, or hypnotism. The more wise you are, the less people can affect you that way. So these are just bonus spell points you get. I use clerics the same way I do wizards. Whatever spells you can cast based on your god, that's how many spell points you have. You can cast the same spell 5 times or 5 different spells. One thing that I like that 5th edition does is the ability to use a higher spell slot to cast a lower spell at a higher level. I'm going to work that in to 2nd edition. I think that really works, especially for wizards. Because 2nd edition wizard spells suck. There's a couple good ones. There's nothing that's going to help you really in combat in any way. So being able to use that for an extra magic missile would be nice. Something like that. Let's see. The next stat is spell failure. A percentage chance as a cleric that you're not wise enough that your spell might fail. As long as you're level 13 wisdom, you have a 0%. Rarely does that become a big issue. And then spell immunities, like I said a moment ago, you get high enough, you're immune to certain things. Tyler says, in my homebrew world, and based off of linking these element chains together, soul chain, in place, but magic you use, the more damage that you do to the world. That's very much a Dark Sun concept. The Dark Sun concept of TSR, Dungeons & Dragons. TSR is a fantasy-based world that's supposedly still a fantasy world, but way in the future. And it never names which fantasy world, although very often people think they're talking about Greyhawk. But it's so far in the future that the world is basically all deserts. Because there were great mage wars, and people learned too late that every time you cast a wizard spell, it sucked magic or life out of the planet. And these wars wasted almost the entire plant population of the world. So what few plants are left, and to be a wizard, you have to be licensed. It's a big deal for you to be able to cast a wizard spell. Because every time you do, you're sucking what little bit of life is left in the world. Because of that, creatures and people have evolved to use psionics, the ability to cast abilities from your mind using an inner power. Psionics is a lot of fun. Dark Sun is very psionics-based, and a really fun world to mess with. If you ever have an opportunity to read any of the Dark Sun worlds, I highly recommend it. I stole that from Dark Sun. Hey, there you go. Same idea then. Yeah, Dark Sun's great. I've read every Dark Sun novel. They're all good. I never read a bad Dark Sun novel. They're pretty awesome. And last episode, we were talking about characters that can have different race parents. I mentioned the mole, which is a half dwarf, half human that never has no hair on its body. That's a Dark Sun creature specifically. Okay, so that was wisdom. The last one is charisma, which maximum number of henchmen. This is the maximum amount of people who will call you, a leader. That doesn't mean you can't hire 50 dudes to protect you. These are people who are loyal to you. You know what I mean? Specifically, like Mercy and her knights. Those would be her henchmen. All of the soldiers of Serenity are hired, and they still may be loyal, but these henchmen are people who will go above and beyond, potentially to the point of giving their life to save you. Loyalty base and reaction adjustment. Loyalty base is part of that whole honor, base honor thing that was at the top there that I told you I don't use. Again, it's how loyal they are to you. It can come into effect when you're saying, okay, give an example. Loyalty base. So say you have a bunch of soldiers. So we'll throw Mercy in as an example, right? Mercy's a hero, and she's charging in with 50 of her soldiers. And then a dragon lands. Well, people with you have less loyalty base are more likely to be like, dragon, psh, I'm out, and just turn around and leave. You know what I mean? So that's what that's intended to affect, things like that. I don't use it. Again, from a role-playing point of view, each person in your party, I determine that type of thing just based on how I've created that NPC. The last one is reaction adjustment. So that's a modifier if people are reacting to you. So I'll give you an example here. Reaction indicates the penalty or bonus due to the character because of charisma when dealing with non-player characters and intelligent creatures. So if you're talking to an NPC and you're trying to be suave or you're trying to haggle with them or be flirtatious, that reaction adjustment is a higher number based on the higher charisma, the better chance you have that people are going to sway your way. Let's see. The original planet got eaten by Elder Korra. So all their power to send this sliver of the planet to a demi-plane, connecting the elemental planes and the Fey shadow planes. Okay, gotcha. I like the Fey planes. All right. That's abilities. Next to that is movement. I don't use it. 5th edition loves movement. Holy hell. And, in my opinion, does it in an insane manner. But like we talked about last time, the ability to basically sprint across the football field in half a second and shit. That's just too much. I don't use movement. Again, I use common sense. Which I think that's the case. And there are obviously things that can affect that. Darsh's boots of charging obviously have an effect. But again, I say in one round you can travel this distance if you're using the boots. It's not variable. That's what it is. Doesn't matter how fast you are. That's how fast the boots will make you. So it doesn't add to your movement. It tells you what your movement is. It's just very fast. So movement, like encumbrance, is something I do not use at all. The movement square is just basically useless on there. Saving throws. Wow. So here's the thing that throws. Here's one of the 3 big things that I think are the biggest difference between 2nd and 5th edition. 5th edition, there's no consistency. And the DM makes it up on the spot. And while I could see bonuses of that sometimes, that is going to make things really hard and potentially hurt groups a little bit, I would think, when, well, he told him he only had to do this, but I'm trying to do the same thing over here, but now he's telling me it's a higher number. But the DM forgot what he said that time, but I remember it. Not a lot of consistencies there. So on the character sheet on the right-hand side, I think you can see. Man, I feel stupid as hell. You guys can't see the character sheet. The whole time I've been pointing out the character sheet, nobody could see the character sheet. I wish someone had mentioned they couldn't see the character sheet. I thought I'd switch to this already. I feel like a dumbass. So, all the things I've been listing them as I've been showing you guys the sheet, and no one can see the sheet but me. Wow, I feel silly. Just a real quick re-overdo. The stuff at the top we talked about, like social rank and things like that, I thought everybody could see the character sheet. You'll notice next to the stats, strength, dexterity, constitution, and all that, all the little things that I mentioned, there are charts in your player's handbook. I'll give you an example. There's a constitution chart. It just gives you, based on what your number is, all the things that you'd put in there. My players today determined one thing that at least Jim really liked is that 2nd edition has a whole lot of charts in it that tell you exactly what you have to roll in specific situations. Again, I personally like it because it gives a more consistent experience. Oh, you're all good. You're all good. How long does this game last? Well, I'm on 30 years right now. 32 years, actually. Purely up to the group. You can have a one-shot adventure you could play in 3 or 4 hours. A one-shot adventure you could play over 4 hours, 8 hours. I write campaigns that usually last several months of playing 8 hours every week or every other week. Purely depends on your group and what your schedule allows. But you could consistently play it, forever. Or, until you die. But there's only an end when you want there to be. 2nd edition, at least, can't speak for 5th. Historically, most characters retire at 20th level. If you manage to get that high, and I've never had anyone get that high. You normally would retire your character at 20th level, and they would just become a permanent NPC. Because at that point, they're just super powerful. And usually, at that point, old. So there's a point when you stop going out doing all the adventures. 8 hours a week, you're a lucky man. All right, so my group now gets together every other Thursday for 4 hours. When I did Merged Worlds back in the day, right? When I actually was playing it with the original group that played Mercy, Darsh, and Dandy, we played every Sunday for 8 to 12 hours. And we would maybe miss a weekend once every 2 to 3 months. At least once every few months, we'd have a weekend where they just come over and crash at my house, and we'd play from Friday all the way through till Sunday night. Taking a break to eat and maybe go out to dinner and such, but we played 10, 12 hours a day for 2 or 3 days. Hell, we took trips to the beach together, and at night would sit on the balcony and in the room with the doors open and play D&D while drinking a bottle of wine and listening to the ocean. We still played D&D there. So I've been very lucky in that regard that usually, to be honest, it's my schedule that limits D&D. If I could play every week, even if it wasn't with the same group, I have enough people who've asked me to DM that I could probably run 3 or 4 groups a month and get every weekend a completely different group for 8 or 10 hours. And that's not like me, it's just honest. I have a lot of people who ask me to, and I just don't have enough time to DM for everybody and write Merge Worlds and do my channel and all that. Be bothering me way too much. Well, I'll tell you what. During that time period, I was primarily single. Except I dated one of the players for a little while. But other than that, it was primarily single. And occasionally, girls that I did date during that time would jump in the group temporarily. Usually try to work that in. Again, you find people like yourself if you're lucky, right? Anyways, so yeah, saving throws. You're going to see saving throws right over here. So there are several different saving throws. The first one is Paralyzed Poison. The next one is Rod, Staff, or Wand. Then Petrify, Polymorph, Breath, Weapon, and Spells. So 9 out of 10 saving throws for an attack effect fall under one of those categories. So if somebody's doing something that paralyzes you, that's not a spell. The spells are obviously their own thing, right? If they're trying to do some type of paralyze, so you drink a paralyzed potion, or you run into a basilisk that's trying to petrify you, which is Petrify Polymorph. Somebody's trying to polymorph you into something. Breath Weapon, basically any dragon. I mean, just an example. You can get saving throw modifiers. Remember I mentioned a little bit earlier that you could get under a high wisdom, you could get, poison save under Constitution. So if you had a +2 there, then you have a +2 versus poison. So saving throws you roll over. And this is one of the things that I will admit is a little bit harder about 2nd edition, is a lot of things you roll over and a lot of things you roll under. It's not completely consistent. So what you're doing, like any ability score, if I make a dex check or a constitution check, I have to roll under the number. So the higher my strength is, the easier it is to succeed, right? If I have a 10 strength, you have a 15 strength, we have to roll under a strength, you've got an extra 25% chance of success. So there's that one. Magical defense adjustment. That's the other one, under wisdom. Magical defense adjustment, whatever number's there, say it's a +2, that would make you +2 versus rods, staff, wand, and spells. So these are different saving throws, but on this one, you roll over. This is the chart. Your class, based on your saving throws, based on your level. As a DM, all I have to say is, make a saving throw versus poison. I don't have to pick a number. You don't have to pick a number. You look at your paper and you know exactly what you have to roll. Every time. If I say make a saving throw versus spell, any spell being cast at you, make a saving throw versus spell. I don't have to figure out, roll over 12 today. Next time you got to roll over a 14. Or if I forget, I'll say 8, and that guy will be mad at me because it killed his character, and I'm making it easier for you. It's always going to tell you exactly what your saving throw is. Now, that's not to say a DM can't step in and say, hey, the person casting this is so ungodly higher level than you, you're getting a negative to your saving throw, or maybe something else has already been cast on you that makes things negative. But for 99% of the time, as a DM, I say make a saving throw versus polymorph. You roll it. With abilities checks, you just got to roll under the number. That's simple. Make a strength check. Roll under the number. I don't have to pick a number or give you a goal. You know what I mean? Right, for spells, but I mean, with ability checks and things like that, a lot of that, especially with ability checks. Can I jump over this thing? Make a dexterity check. I don't need to pick a number. If you're a dexterity, roll under that number. You're good. It just makes it easy and consistent. But saving throws is, like I said, so abilities checks are under, saving throws are over. And learning which ones are under and which is over is probably one of the things people who are learning 2nd edition struggle with at first until they, get it down. Doesn't take long, but at first, that's going to be one of the things. Best spell in the game, sticks to snakes. My favorite spell in the game is still grease. Cast grease on a set of stairs and make a noise at the bottom and just watch everybody fall down the stairs coming to investigate it. I love that. Or cast it on the handle of someone's weapon. Watch them not be able to pull it out of their sheath. Charisma, so say a bard casting an illusion, they have to... And that is a 5-step equation of algebra you've just thrown at me. And on top of that, I don't think that your class should determine which ability score you're trying to make. If you're trying to jump across the chasm, it's a dexterity. I don't care what class you are. You gotta make a dexterity check. Trying to pick up something heavy, it's a strength check. I think situationally is much, much easier, has a every ability, every type of thing you may ever want to do falls under one of those 5. And it makes it consistent. Plus, I love a chart. I love a good chart. For example, if I need to know what a saving throw versus spell is on a warrior who's level 10, I can tell you that that's 11 or above. That's it. I don't have to change anything. All right, so that's saving throws. Armor class. This is hit points. Hit points are the same thing. We already talked about that. Got a number, you get to add your hit point adjustment, which would be here next to Constitution. First level, you get maximum. After that, you get a roll. If you don't like it, you can re-roll, but you got to keep the second one. Wounds, specific open wounds. You've got an open sore, something you need to remember, especially if something's infected or magically done. Sometimes that's also a place where you might put down Darsh has broken left horn. That's just something that he would record in there. We're going to skip over AC and weapons. We're going to come back to those in a minute. And we're going to step into the world of proficiencies. So, 2nd edition has something called weapon proficiencies and non-weapon proficiencies. And based on your class, there's a chart. Weapon proficiencies are how many different weapons you know how to use. So, hypothetically, a rogue gets 2 weapon proficiency points at level 1. So they can choose 2 weapons that they know how to use. This means that they get no bonuses to attack, but they get no negatives for using it. And this is one area in particular where I didn't like it. Because it says, hey, you're a rogue, you know these 5 weapons. Okay, well, I was raised a city a million miles away from here. Why is it we happen to just learn the exact same weapons? I'm a rogue who uses a dagger and a whip. That's a rogue who likes to use a sword and a javelin for a ranged weapon. That's a rogue over there who likes to use a trident and a net. That's their combo. That's what they use. It allows you to personalize your character a little bit more by choosing those. And every so many levels, you get another point to get another weapon, because over time you might learn to use new weapons. So, for a warrior, rogue, usually a ranger, paladin, some situations a druid, there's not a lot of weapon limitations until you get to mage or priest. Mage is very strict what weapons you can use. Blown away when I found 5th edition gave you crossbows. There's no crossbows in 2nd. Mages have very limited. Clerics, their limitations are based on what god they worship. So if I'm a cleric of healing, I cannot use a bladed weapon. That's how that works. All my weapon choices are blunt. If I'm a cleric of nature, which is basically almost a druid, I'm using only natural weapons. So nothing with steel or iron, anything that's wood, stone, things of that nature. So the weapon limitations can be based a little bit more on what class you are, but the limitations are very small. So as you level, how often you get another point to spend depends on what class you are. So warriors get one more often. Warrior, they're training, they're using it, so on and so forth. So every 3 levels. So warrior starts with 4, and they get another one every 3 levels. And if you want, as a DM, you can make it realistic. Like, okay, you get to pick any new weapon you want that anybody else in the party can use. The assumption is they've been teaching you how to use it. I don't do that one as much, but I've played with groups that have. You could also do it a situation where it's like, okay, here we are in the group, 3 of us, and none of us can use a Morning Star. We found a Morning Star +2. I don't have a magic weapon. They do. I got a spell point to use. I'm going to take Morning Star. Now I've got a +2 Morning Star that I can use. We found this Morning Star. I've been teaching myself to use it. My natural warrior instincts and how to fight and such takes me a little bit of time, but after 3 levels, I've learned to use that. That is now a weapon I'm able to use. Wizards get 1, and they get another one every 6 levels. You've been spending a lot of time learning how to cast spells. Don't have time learning how to use a lot of weapons, is the concept. Priests get 2 with another one every 4 levels. Rogue get 2 with another one every 4th level. And with a rogue, it's because their skill, they get so many other skills that they have to learn. So everybody can choose to put a point in whatever weapon they like within their limitations. Which again, like I said, unless you're major cleric, there's not a lot. I think druids have some. But most others don't have much limitation. So you could jump in there and pick whatever weapon you want. That is now the weapon you use. You know how to use it. You don't get a negative if you're trying to use it. If you pick up a weapon that you don't know how to use, you get a negative penalty. How high that negative penalty is depends on what class you are. Where a warrior would only get a -2, a mage would get a -5. Because a warrior might pick up a weapon they've never seen and still understand the basics of how to make it work a little bit, even though they may not be phenomenal. A wizard runs out of spells, and they know how to stab with a dagger, and they pick up a whip. I mean, they're not going to be doing a lot of whip damage really, really quickly. Whip is an improved mage weapon. Let's see. So we've got that. So those are the weapon proficiencies. Now, whereas many classes get a whole bunch of extra skills and abilities, this is one area where warriors get to shine. Because warriors have the ability to specialize. Which means they can put a second point into a weapon that they know. They've already put a point in. And as specialized, they now get a +1 to hit and a +2 to damage. So for 2 points, now my longsword, any longsword I ever pick up, I do +1 to attack, +2 to damage. Doesn't make it a magical weapon. Just means I'm good with it. I'm going to sneak through with an attack better than a lot of people are. You can specialize with multiple weapons. We house rule, we also allow special stacking, specialization stacking, which means I'm going to put another point into my longsword. Now it's +2/+2. I've got another point. Now it's +3/+2. You can get better at hitting someone, but the damage is still going to, sword's still going to do basically the same amount of damage. I'm getting through your defenses better, but I'm still cutting you 4 inches wide on the arm. Warriors are the only group that get to do that. And that's really where they get to shine. Same as where everybody, because the whole action thing does not exist. If you are a warrior, just like everybody else, you get 1 attack per round. Unless you're shooting or using a weapon that specifically has a higher rate of fire. You can throw 2 daggers around, you can shoot 2 arrows around. That's in a chart in the player's handbook as well, for ranged weapons. But from 1st to 6th level, you get 1 attack a round. From 7th to 12th, warriors get 3 attacks every 2 rounds. So 1 round they can take 2, 1 round they can take 1, and they get to choose. Attacks of opportunity and all that stuff just doesn't exist. I have 2 attacks. This round, I'm going to attack you. I can split my attacks. I'm going to attack him with 1 and attack him with 1. That's my choice, as long as they're both within melee range to do that. And 13 and up, you get 2 attacks per round. Now, if you specialize, which, again, the warrior thing specifically, then you get to up that. So if I was a warrior who specialized in longsword, I get 3 attacks per 2 rounds from 1 to 6 right out the gate. And then when I would get to the point where I normally would get 3 every 2, I get 2 every 1. And then 13 above, I get 5 every 2. Separate them how I like. 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 3 and 2, 4 and 1. You can't ever choose to do them all in 1 round. The only caveat to that. I'm going to use 5 and then stand here next round. Doesn't work like that. Still have to have at least 1 in each round, but you get to choose where the extra ones lie. So specialized gives you added attack to hit, added damage, and you get extra attacks. So for warriors, that's the biggest boost they get total, but right out of the gate. And they get to know how to do it with more weapons. Your brain? Okay. I understand. It can be a bit. Again, I promise. I will say this. I am a cleric. I spend 8 hours a day studying to be a cleric. Casting spells, doing rites, saying prayers, all that kind of stuff. Friend is a warrior. Now, he spends 8 hours training with weapons. After my 8 hours, I train with weapons for 2 hours. After his 8 hours, he trains for 2 more hours. I can get good with this weapon. I'm never going to get that good. Which is why he has specialized. If he spends all that time with one of his weapons more than the other ones, it would make sense. He's an excellent swordsman. But he might be okay with the bow. So that's the kind of concept from a role-playing point of view of how specializations work. Only because a warrior doesn't have to learn spells. Feats got a little bit closer to it. I remember reading some of the feat stuff, and it did try to make it a little bit closer. So with the only difference to that is bows. So with bows, you can specialize in, but you can only ever specialize in it once. And it's +2/+0 is what you get instead of the +1/+2. So you're better with the bow, but the bow's never going to do more damage. You just have a better chance of hitting somebody. Because the damage you do is based on the type of arrow you're using. And there are several different types of arrows. There's a chart. And if you're using metal-tipped arrows, you're going to do more damage than you did with stone-tipped arrows. They're sharper. They're better made. They're also sturdier. Less chance of breaking, easier to recover. So you and I both have a bow. We're both shooting the same type of arrow. We have the exact same strength. They're not composite bows. I have a better chance to aim because I spent more time practicing. I'm specialized. But if I shoot him and you shoot him, still going to do the same amount of damage with our arrow. So it gives you a bonus But the other thing that it gives you is it gives you a new range. So in the player's handbook in 2nd edition, there's a chart that says missile weapon range. So, for example, longbow. How much damage? You can't just shoot someone standing in front of you. Why not? Why? There's pros and cons to the concept of both. But if you specialize in a bow, you gain point blank, the ability to shoot someone directly in front of you, which is very much what you see Legolas doing, popping someone right in front of him and back and forth. You're not going to see that from an archer in most realistic kind of style movies, right? If you're watching a movie about Braveheart or whatever, and people are shooting bows, they're not up front shooting people from 3 feet away. Hello, Fortnite hiders. Yeah, Ashley and Jim really liked the charts. It's just very easy to say, okay, if you're creating a character, I don't have to be there half the time. Go through and create your character. I want to see you roll your stats. Cool. Go home and create them. I know you're using the same charts I am. You're not going to get it wrong. I can see the charts, right? But again, the concept, it gives you the ability to point blank. If you are a warrior and you specialize in daggers, you have to choose ranged or melee. You can use another, you could specialize in daggers again, using more points. But if you're just choosing daggers, are you an expert knife thrower? Or are you an expert knife fighter? They are very different skills. I do Fortnite hiders. Said that wrong. I'm so sorry. I do. Welcome back. But you have to choose one or the other. You might be deadly at range with a dagger, but somebody gets in close and you're like, ooh. So you have to choose. For example, a good example there in Merged Worlds, Smallsius Early, who very often plays like a rogue, is a warrior who's a melee knife fighter. Doesn't ever throw a dagger, but knife fighting is his jam, and he's specialized in it several times, so he's dagger stacked, so you're never going to see him with a sword. But when he gets in close enough with a dagger, he's snicka, wah, Jedi, and he can do a lot of damage. But I wanted a melee NPC that was much like a rogue in many ways in the way that he played and acted. Doesn't wear a lot of armor. He's very sneaky based. But he still wanted him to be a warrior because I wanted him to be straight up melee fighter. So that's how weapon proficiencies and specializations work. Okay? After that, we have non-weapon proficiencies. So if you're looking at your character sheet right here, on the top of the right-hand column is where you're going to write your weapon proficiencies. Usually down at the bottom of that column is where you're going to write the languages that you know how to speak. Because I'll be honest with you, it's rare those two are ever going to touch. If you got a lot of weapon proficiencies, usually your intelligence isn't super, super high. Because that's not your focus, right? It's not to say it can't be, but it's usually not. On the left-hand side, we're going to use non-weapon proficiency. So on the right, where you'd write down dagger, if you're a rogue, you would put 1 SLT. You've got 1 slot, or 1 PT, 1 point. You put 1 point in it. There's no perks, there's no cons other than you don't get a negative. You're a warrior who's specialized, you'd put dagger +1/+2. +1 to hit, +2 to damage. So that's how you'd write that on your character sheet. And the left-hand side is non-weapon proficiencies. And that handy-dandy chart that had the weapon proficiencies also says the non-weapon proficiency. And so now we kind of have a flip. Warriors get the least, whereas mages get the most. And mages get them more often than a wizard does. Clerics being better than rogues and wizards. So in this situation, rogues and warriors start with 3. Wizards and priests start with 4. Warrior, wizard, and priest get another point every 3 levels, where rogue only gets it every 4. We're going to talk about why a little bit down the road. So non-weapon proficiencies are how many different non-weapon skills you get to choose. Fortnite, I love your Sky Factory 4 videos. I'm like, hey, well, I'm happy I could help. I'm glad you enjoyed them. I put a new one out yesterday. It was fun. I hadn't had one out in a few weeks. And I've already had a request for another one, so I'm going to put that one together for next week. So non-weapon proficiencies, I guess, I remember a 5th edition, there were like We talked about this. Skills and feats and shit. And there was a section, and you can pick 2 out of these 5 on the list. There's a little dot there, and you can put your little modifier in front of it if you want. And then those are the ones that you knew. So with 2nd edition, you get to take those 4 points, and you get to come to the non-weapon proficiency page. Give me 1 second. Okay. Non-weapon proficiencies. There's a chart for general, which everybody gets to pick. Priests, rogues, warriors, and wizards. So if you're a wizard, you get to choose from general and wizard. Warrior can choose from general, warrior, so on and so forth. There are some that get multiple. For example, a ranger gets warrior, wizard in general, whereas a druid gets priest, warrior in general. Bard gets rogue, warrior, wizard in general. Everything but priest. So there, you would use this chart to buy what you want. It'll tell you how many points it costs to buy it, what skill, dexterity, wisdom, intelligence, that you would do a check with, and the modifier. So hypothetically, if I wanted to do mining, I would do a wisdom check, -3. I subtract 3 from my roll since I'm trying to roll under. That's a good thing. Negatives are better than pluses in this situation. Now, some of these skills are just meant to build out your character. Like one of the guys today, one of the characters took cobbling. It can make shoes. Is that you're going to whip that out in the middle of battle and cobble someone's shoes against them? Probably not. But that doesn't mean you couldn't find some fun way to bring that into your character. No matter where you go, you're always working on a new pair of shoes and you're selling them for extra money, or you'll be in the middle of a bar and everything. Everybody's talking and dancing or whatever, and yet you're in the corner trying to convince someone why they should change to a different shoe type based on their arch. I mean, it's just silly things like that you can mix in there. But there's also important stuff like swimming. You don't take that skill, you don't know how to swim. Not everybody knows how to swim. That's something you got to learn. But you get things like rope use, leather working, fire building, carpentry, animal handling, animal training, artistic ability, musical instruments, things that you can choose to flesh out your characters based on how you want. And then you would get into the actual specific class ones like priest, astrology, healing, herbalism, local history, spellcraft. Rogue is going to disguise, forgery, gaming, gem cutting, juggling, jumping, things of that nature. Warriors, blind fighting, hunting, navigating, set snares, survival, hunting. Wizards, ancient history, reading and writing, the ability to read and write many, many different things. Ancient languages, gem cutting, things of that nature. Why would they need that? Because if they ever want to make a magic item down the road, the gem you use may have to be very perfectly cut. Doesn't know how to swim and she almost drowned. Exactly. So I always recommend swimming. Now, does this mean you can't dog paddle and make it to the shore? Sure, probably. You can get in the water, you may not just straight up drown. There's rapids or a current and you're screwed, but you're just fall into the water a little bit, you might be okay. Armor smithing, with the tools, you might be able to repair that. Weapon smithing the same way, right? Ashley, as a ranger, she took Boyer Fletcher. She can make her own arrows. So if she's making a regular arrow that uses a stone arrowhead, she can make those herself. If she doesn't take blacksmithing, she has to buy her arrowheads if she wants to make metal-tipped ones. But she could go into a town and buy 20 of them or 30 of them and say, I'm going to make them myself, saving her a bunch of money. Or down the road, her wizard friend wants to make magical arrows. She can roll to see if she can make a perfect arrow to do that. So a lot of things can be used for that down the road. Some of my favorite ones are the rogue ones, like ventriloquism. Man, that's an awesome and funny thing to use in games. Ventriloquism has been a laugh riot almost every time somebody's found a way to use it. But you get to choose. Now, if you're a warrior and you want to choose something from the mage list, you still can. It costs you 1 extra point. So if it costs 1 point for a wizard, it's going to cost you 2. Most things cost 1. There's a couple that cost 2. There's only one that costs 3, and that's weaponsmithing. And that's on every chart. Weaponsmithing is the only one that costs 3. Now, the other caveat I'd like to bring, not only to this, but to keep this in mind with some of the other things that we've talked about, this is the 2nd edition Player's Handbook. I also have the 2nd edition Tome of Magic. I have the Book of Artifacts, Forgotten Realms Adventures, Dragonlance Adventures. I've got the Specialty Class Book for every race and class, from psionics to ninja to whatever you can think of. Inside every one of those books is going to be some non-weapon proficiency skills that aren't in the Player's Handbook. Every time there's new stuff specifically for that. So the Tome of Magic is going to give mages and clerics some stuff that nobody else can have. The Rogue's Handbook is going to have some new rogue skills that only rogues can use. So while these are the base ones, normally you start with the base ones, but once you start to level up and earn more points, you can start choosing out of the more specialty books. The other caveat to non-weapon proficiencies, we're going to go back to our character sheet for a moment here. Under intelligence, the first thing I said was number of languages. That's how many languages you know. That's also how many extra non-weapon proficiency points you get when you create your character. So if you're a wizard who can speak 4 languages, you get 4 non-weapon points to start off, plus you get to add your 4. That's 8 points to start building your character with in the non-weapon proficiencies. A warrior only gets 3, but they got an extra 2 languages, gives them 5. It gives them something to work on. So as you're leveling up your character and earning more points, you do not have to use them immediately. If you're like, hey, I've got 2 points left, I'm going to wait till I earn my next one and then spend 3 points to get weaponsmithing. That's fine. The assumption there is it's taken you longer to learn how to be a weaponsmith. Partially because you're out adventuring all the time, and who has time to sit in an anvil all day? But there's almost always some downtime between adventures, and that's where assumed a lot of this practice takes place. But you can save points and use them later. First level, you're almost always going to use them right out the gate because you need to get access to as much as you can so you can start rounding out your character and figure out what works best for them. But as you level, you might want to hang back and wait on something specific. The survival skill, you have to pick the terrain. Forest, mountain, desert, Arctic. So you want to be able to... And survival means a lot. Like you can walk out into the wilderness naked and you're going to survive. You know what I mean? You're going to be able to make all sorts of food and housing and such where, you know how to survive, how to purify water, what type of foods you can eat. In that area, you're going to make it. Hey, Buff. Hey, sweetie. One of my kitties is visiting. There's treats over there. Did you go get them? I don't think... No, you can't have my chocolate chip cookies. Leave those alone. My God, kitties. So that's non-weapon proficiencies, and it's one of my favorite things for characters to get to do, or players to do, because it's a really awesome way where they get to sit down and really start to add lore to their character, right? You pick cobbling and you want to make it amusing. Well, why? Why are you a cobbler? Well, maybe your dad was a cobbler. He wasn't an adventurer. You learned to cobble growing up. You worked in your shop. That's where you saved up money to be able to get your first sword, to go out and do whatever it is you want to do. Your mother was a seamstress for extra money. You learned to sew, so you also now can sew clothing and put patches and stuff. She picked survival today, yes. So, I mean, that's one of the skills that Ashley chose for her ranger, which really makes sense with a ranger. Although they get some survival skills right out the gate, that one definitely adds on top of that. But it's a fun way of really getting to nitty-gritty, pick specific skills and ability, and there's so many to choose from. It's very rare you're going to have somebody with the exact same stuff, unless you're dealing with the worst kind of player, the power gamer, someone who's trying to min-max every stat to be able to do the most damage. I don't usually play with those people. But one of my favorite combinations is if you know how to use a whip, and you take rope use, now you can start doing Indiana Jones stuff. Whipping people around their legs, pulling. Artemis has that. That's in the most recent adventure. Artemis wrapped around someone's arm, hit, and then somebody cut the arm off. And she freaked out because there was an arm stuck in her whip. But, she can do that. Swing across the thing. Then know how to wiggle it in a way that it'll unravel. That's something you can use with those 2 skills. Called skills. Gotcha. And I knew that I said, as it leveled up, things changed differently. And there's just such a large diversity of them, you know? Oh, okay. My problem with min-maxing is different from power gaming. Power gamers will min-max everything. A good way to spot a power gamer is to say, hey, you have 4 melee class characters. What weapon do they use? Longsword, 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 longsword. Why? Because longsword does more damage than any other sword. 1d8, 1d12. Most individual damaging sword in 2nd edition. So, you can, if every time they take the same weapon, and it's always the one with the most damage, you're taken away from your role-playing. These are the same people that there'll be a pile of loot and they're deciding what they get. And they take something powerful, even though there's something there that their character obviously and common sensely would want more. I've had to deal with some of those. Usually you break them of the habit pretty quickly, or they don't end up lasting long. So, can you choose urban for survival? Yes, you can. You can choose city for survival. I don't think it's really known as urban. Hi, baby. Hey, Squeaky. It's just normally known as city survival. But yes, you can take city. Urban's probably a better word for it. Give me 1 quick second, guys. I think she didn't know her treats are good. Here, sweetie. Let me get your treat. That's what it was. She wasn't down here earlier when I gave the cats the treats, and she didn't know she had some sitting over there. So I'm back. Into role playing. Oh yeah, no, Tyler, 100% agree with you. Some people can learn. Some people get mad and then storm out, and you're like, that's just not the player for my group. And again, I've seen groups where everybody, including the DM, are power gamers, and they have a fucking blast. That's great. That's the type of group for that person. But doesn't fit well in my group and because my stuff is very story oriented. So I've always found a lot of the people who I play with won't even think to ask. Eventually, once you get a few levels under them, won't even think to ask for experience. They're more interested in the story. And at the end, I'm like, hey, we want to do experience? Oh yeah, I forgot about that. You know, it's not a big deal to them. They just want to live through the story. So again, you find the people who work for your style. And there's a million styles out there for both players and DMs. It's just a matter of finding the group that's good for you. Yes, I like that as well, Tyler. So again, I know I'm bouncing a little bit here around. There are special abilities that you can get for your class or for your race that differ a little bit from 5th. The biggest difference in 2nd edition is dark vision doesn't exist. It's infravision. So infravision is being able to see using heat. You can liken it to a version of predator vision. And while that may seem weird to people who are born to that, that's normal. But that's how infravision works. Dark vision itself can exist in a couple rare forms. Mercy's circlet she wears gives dark vision. And that's why in my stories, she has an edge over even people with infravision, because she can read. Cannot read written without some type of special magical ink. You cannot read in the dark. Can't read with infravision. Whereas infravision has some perks, because if someone has walked through this stairs or through this hallway recently, I can see the heat left from their footprints. Dark vision doesn't give you that. So there's pros and cons to both. And it's easy, especially if you ever read any of the early TSR and Dungeons & Dragons novels, you'll see that infravision is the primary. One of the great examples of that is if you read any of the Dritz Jordan, that's how I pronounce it. It's probably wrong. Don't judge me. I've never heard it spoken. I only have read it. But the Dritz Drow Elf novels, which are great. The Crystal Shard series, the first 3 that technically came out, are all right. But his Prelude, the Homeland, Sojourn, Exile books, phenomenal. I read them in chronological order, so I actually read those first because a friend of mine lent them to me, and he didn't know the Crystal Shard ones technically came out first. In that, they talk about that a lot, that in drow societies, you're not going to find lights anywhere, or torches or fire, except occasionally mages who have to train themselves to be able to see a little bit in order to read and write spells. They comment on that. They describe that specifically in there, as well as a lot of the early novels. They describe how the heat vision works. Again, the drow novels are a great example of that, since it's used more often than anywhere else in many of the novels I've read. But so, second edition, you have infravision, not dark vision, and I keep it that way. Does it negate invisibility? No, because it will cloak. It's magically cloaking you. So it also hides your heat scent. That said, a rogue using hide and shadows, it can negate that. So, you know what I mean? It can negate that. So dark vision, infravision, it's harder for a rogue to hide. Unless they're pulling an Arnold and slapping mud all over their body. And there are things that rogues can get. There's, in second edition, and it may even be in fifth as well, but there's some magic items like creams and specific clothings you can wear that can help hide your body heat. Specifically for that reason. But I use infravision. I prefer infravision because dark vision, I like it to be a very rare, because it's so powerful in many ways. Again, being able to read in the dark is horrendous. You'd be surprised how much a mage would stab a guy to be able to read his spellbooks in the pitch black darkness. You know what I mean? So that to me is something that's not a common ability. I'd like that to be something very rare to come across. Draven, I uploaded something in your Discord server, Mergedworlds Behind the Dice. Excellent. I don't normally keep that up, but this is the one stream I don't care to check it. Let me swing over there. It's a meme of I can't remember his name. The guy who played the first Spider-Man. And he has the one where he says glasses, and then he puts it on and things get blurry. It's D&D armors and weaponsmithing. He puts it up, and then he says Tinker's Construct. Which, yeah, you could very easily Tinker's Construct if you took weaponsmithing and armor smithing in second edition. I mean, I could totally see how that could happen. I like that. Well played. Now, I know I've skipped over armor and weapons, because that's the stuff that's going to be a little more complicated than what I've covered for people to start with. So I'm going to hit that last. So bear with me. I know I'm jumping around a little bit. Ammunition. I don't use it. You don't need this. I mean, you could say I have 60 arrows. You know what I mean? However many you can carry on average. Boyer Fletcher helps because you can repair and reuse arrows a lot easier. And that's a great thing for Boyer Fletcher as well, because even if your arrow breaks, if they can recover the arrowhead and it's in good shape, they can make a new arrow. So, ammunition, again, like encumbrance, is common sense. No, you don't have 5,000 arrows on you. You know what I mean? Come at me with a number, keep rough track of how many you have, and we'll be fine. Travel Journal, Marco used a cool book. Glass beads and drawings on tarot. Nice. But yeah, I don't mess with ammunition other than common sense. You know, if we've been on an adventure and you've shot 40 arrows, I might be like, you might want to calm down all the arrows. You only had 60 with you. Chill. We're gonna jump to the page 2 here real quick. So at the top, this is where you write your gear. Here's where you keep your experience. Here's where you keep your coins, keep your gems, other valuable treasure. That's going to be a golden horse statue, silver dishes, things of that. Something you're going to sell. Down here is where you're going to put your magic items and magical gear, rings, stuff you're wearing. With the exception of magical armor, you're going to put in your armor section. Magical weapons, you're going to put in your weapons section. There are 7 slots. Is it 7? No, 6 slots for weapons. Can you carry more than 6? Yes. Depending on who you are. But normally, depending on what they are, 6 is the most you can have in a grabbable location. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm carrying 4 swords, it's going to be hard for me to have 4 swords all hanging on my belt. So I may have 2 of them wrapped up, tucked in behind my backpack. I'm not whipping out in the middle of a fight. You know what I mean? So you've got to be a bit more realistic on how do you have those. If I have 2 swords on my belt, but I have 4 magic swords, I don't want to get rid of any. Okay, which 2 are your primary swords? Daggers is a little bit easier, right? Okay, I'm a dagger, 2 on my belt. You can, 2 on my boots, whatever. That's a little bit easier. Same with darts, things of that nature. Quiver, you could have 1 or 2 quivers, but usually that's the maximum. If you have 2 quivers, you got to have less in your backpack, again, for common sense. So different stuff like that. When it comes to, again, I try to just do everything based on common sense. Rarely do we run into many problems. Unless you're Dandy with 147. Dandy actually only how many she got? She's got 3, 4 on her belt, 1 in each boot. And then she has 1 in the back of her belt. That's a hidden dagger. Uncode's magic book of steals all the spells in it. Magically trapped. That's a little more issue. But yes, so in 5th edition, you basically get some gear when you choose your thingamabobber, your class and your such, or your background, or whatever it is. 2nd edition isn't like that. You get starting money. Here's the chart. There's always a chart. If you are a warrior, you get 5d4 times 10 gold pieces, a maximum of 200. I always give max. Screw rolling at the beginning. I give you a startup. So you get a max. That's how much coin you have to shop with. You then have to buy weapons, armor, and clothing, and then gears. But don't worry, there's charts for that. So we have charts for basic clothing, food and lodging. I normally don't make people do that unless they're staying at an inn. I just give them a price. You don't have to. When it comes to basic provisioning that you take on your quest, you have the average amount of stuff. And you supplement it with stuff that you find. If you're in the desert, it's going to be a little bit harder. You're going in the Underdark, might be a little bit harder. So in those situations, you may have to pack differently. But for a regular adventure, you just carry normal amounts of food. Unless you're on a ship voyage and you're Darsh and you're a captain, and then you have to plan. Then you say, I'm taking 3 weeks worth of supplies, and when it gets to week 2, you need to find a place to go. Household provisioning. Very first one, right here. For those of you who like Merge Worlds. Barrel of pickled fish, 3 gold pieces. That's where that came from. One of the characters bought a barrel of pickled fish and put it in the chest of holding. And sure enough, that became a thing. No one went anywhere without a barrel of pickled fish. It became just one of the most common and loved weird items that they had. But again, you don't have to do that. They wanted to. But then you get over to tack and harness. If you've got animals, right? There's plain armor for your horse, cart harnesses, saddles, saddlebags, yokes. Transportation from a barge, longship, gnar, great galley, wagon, carts, even down to sails for a sailboat. Basic equipment, backpacks, barrels, block and tackle, bolt case if you use a crossbow. This is the equivalent of your quiver. Need break? You're going to go listen to music? Okay. I know I'm throwing a lot. I'm sorry if it's boring. Appreciate you coming by. But that's all. There's just tons of equipment. You get to go shopping. You get to buy what you want. And then, of course, you have your charts for your weapons and armor. And your weapon's going to tell you how much damage they do, how much they cost. Same with armor. And animals. If you want to buy a dog or a goat or a chicken, might want to do that. Your head is getting bigger. Yeah, I know that. I have a feeling I would have a lot less people watching this stream today because it's second, which most people don't know about. Most at this point are probably not going to be switching to second, but I've had a lot of people since I've been talking so much about second ask about this, why I'm breaking it down. Because I've had people ask especially when I talked about trying to roll a 5th edition recently, they want to know more about the comparisons. But that's where you buy all your equipment with your money, so on and so forth. For coins, there are 5 commonly used coins. You got CP, SP, EP, GP, EP. EP is Electrum. Nobody uses Electrum. Ignore Electrum. Useless. SP depends on the world that you're in. In most fantasy novels, at least in the World of War or in the Dungeons & Dragons novels, most worlds use steel coins or silver coins, and then some worlds use steel. So it just depends on which one you're on. I normally use silver. It's just easier. What most people use. PP, platinum pieces. That's correct. Platinum pieces, gold pieces, electrum pieces, silver pieces, and copper pieces. There is a handy-dandy conversion chart in case you need to convert one into the other. Because a lot of the prices in the shopping area are in like chalk, such as copper pieces. And while all these have weapons and armor in them, again, any of the supplement books I have with other, like Jim's monk is using a comma as a weapon, which he got out of the Ninja's Handbook. If you find something in there and you're like, hey, would my character be able to use this? I'm always happy to look at it. Most of the time I'm going to say yes, unless it's just absurd. The only weapon that is in 2nd edition that I don't allow is the arquebus, and most DMs don't that I've come across. And as always, I would like to say there's a caveat to every rule. Doesn't mean I wouldn't allow it. I historically have not allowed it. It's probably the best way to say that. An arquebus is basically a blunderbuss, or the oldest style of musket. And it has a large percentage chance of backfiring and hurting you. But a lot of people like to avoid bringing guns into the game. It really depends on your DM and the world he's creating. Some people draw a hard line between technology and magic. Hey, Jonas. You're super nice. Oh, well, that's so nice. Thank you very much. I appreciate you popping in. What a sweet thing. Thank you very much, Jonas. Hope you're doing well, bud. But yeah, some people draw a hard line. Early on, I had a hard line. I don't want technology. I don't want guns and such. I didn't want cannons. That's basically the next step is guns. How do you have cannons and not eventually get to guns, right? As Merged Worlds has grown, I have wavered on that line a little bit more. I will probably waver even more in the future. Because that's really where you start bringing in Tinker Gnomes. And what are gnomes coming up with, right? A Tinker Gnome is creating mechanical things. He may not be building a helicopter, but it doesn't mean he's not going to come up with some type of gadgets that are going to be useful. Is the conversion base 10? Mostly, yes. Kind of. Platinum being the difference, right? So 1 platinum is worth 5 gold. 5 gold is worth 1 gold is worth 10 silver. 1 silver is 10 copper. So the conversion is mostly the same except platinum to gold. It's 1 to 5, and then it's 1 to 10, 1 to 10 from that point on. Is there friendly fire? There's always friendly fire. It may be a butter dish, but there's always friendly fire. Joe says, I'm sorry I'm rarely in your streams here and in Twitch. It's rarely online at 3 a.m. Oh, no, understandable. I know that for a lot of people who like my content, my streams are awfully late. If I didn't have my other job, I would stream earlier, for sure. But unfortunately, I get off my regular job at 9 p.m. Eastern, and I start streaming at 9:30 p.m. If this ever gets big enough where I can just do this, I guarantee you'll see like 6 to 8 hour streams every day, starting earlier. One day. But I appreciate you'd like to come by even if you can't, so I thank you. So yeah, coins conversion, gems conversion. Early game, you get a 5,000 gold piece diamond. I've never seen a heart broken better than a wizard with a 5,000 gold piece diamond. Because in his hand, he's holding, this is 5,000 gold pieces. I can get a lot of gear, get a lot of supplies. I can get like, maybe even buy a spell scroll or even a, something that get me a new spell. But 12 levels from now, I might want to make a magic item and need a 5,000 gold piece perfectly cut diamond. Do I want to try to hang on to this for if I maybe want to do a magic item down the road? I love seeing them get torn like that. Wizards always have that heartbreak. Rogues, no problem. They'll sell that in a heartbeat. Now, on this page, one other thing I want to touch on is experience. So, character classes each have their own experience chart. And some classes need more experience than others to hit a level. I believe in 5th it's much more standard, and I kind of like that better. I like the 5th one where everybody levels at the same amount. I'm not against potentially changing that. But it is slightly different for a reason. So warriors have one chart, paladin and rangers have another. Clerics and druids share one. Rogues and bards, I think, are separate, if I remember correctly. Just use some spell instead of buying food for a month. Exactly, right? What are you going to do with it? I like that, Lex. What's up, Lex? Welcome in, bud. So, part of the reason is because of how experience works. Now, again, I didn't get super far into 5th. So for those of you who know about 5th, you may turn around and tell me, hey, this is how it is in 5th. In 2nd edition, if you have the minimum requirement number for your class, which, for example, for a cleric would be a 16 wisdom, you get 10% extra experience. That's rogues with dexterity, warriors with strength. Druids, rangers, paladins, and bards have 2 or 3 stats they have to hit to get that. Because again, you know, in this, a paladin has to have, I'll give you an example. This is something we talked about the other day. A paladin has to have a minimum of 12 strength, 9 constitution, 13 wisdom, and 17 charisma. A ranger needs 13 strength, 13 dex, 14 constitution, and 14 wisdom. I'm fluid on that. If you're one off, you have one, that's not, I'll work, you can still be one. You know, a lot of times in that situation, I would be like, okay, you can still be one, but if down the road you have the point to gain an ability score in anything, you have to put it in one of the ones that you're not hitting your goal at to keep getting to be a ranger or a paladin, whatever the case is. But if you really want to be a paladin and you're a couple points off, we're going to work it out. I want you to play what you want. I'm not like, no, you're 1 point shy on strength, pick something out. I'm not that kind of a dick. I'm a completely different kind of dick. But yes, so they have different. So many classes have that ability. Okay. Clerics can tithe up to 10% of their treasure gained in a given adventure. So if you have 10,000 gold pieces, and on the next adventure you find 2,000 gold, you can tithe 10% of the 2,000, not your total. And you get an experience point for every gold piece value worth of loot that you tithe. So if you had 2,000 and you tithe 10%, it's 200 gold pieces. That's a bonus 200 experience you get. Paladins are a little bit different there. Paladins have to tithe everything except 10%. Or if they're at a level where they're trying to build like an actual temple or keep, they can keep the money to build that, but they don't walk around just gathering loot. Paladins don't roll like that. So that's extra experience that a cleric can get. Rogues get experience points for every gold piece worth of treasure that they end the treasure with, the adventure with. Again, from that adventure. So if your rogue had 10,000 and you find 2,000, you get 2,000 extra experience. Or something, I can't remember the conversion rate, but it's like that. I think it's 1 for 1, and I think for every 2 gold, for rogues, it's every 2 gold pieces, you get one. So for 2,000 gold, you get an extra 1,000 experience. And you don't have to give it up. You're not tithing shit. That's your treasure. You just get experience for being a good rogue and hoarding. So I have seen there be some really good magic items there, and a rogue reach out and be their turn to pick loot, and they're like, I'm going to take this 2,000 gold piece diamond or gem. They're like, really? You don't want the magic thing? He's like, no, this is going to give me a level. I want this. The end of the adventure, if I make it out of the adventure with this diamond, that'll be enough to push me over so I get my next level. So there's a couple of classes that have extra ways to get experience. Rogues and clerics being the 2 main ones. But that's just kind of a fun thing there for experience I wanted to mention. So now we step into the 2 most challenging parts of 2nd edition. Armor class, we're going to do first, and then we're going to finish with what the hell is Thaco? Some of you know, some of you did not. Some of you just recently learned. Some of you may be watching this later. So we're going to start with armor. So in 2nd edition, the highest armor class you can have is 10. The lowest armor class you can have is -10. So the lower the number, the better armored you are, or the harder to hit. We'll give an example here just to get started out. You know what? That's awesome. All right. So let me pull up the handy dandy chart of armor. Yes, there's a chart. Because there's always a chart, right? Why wouldn't there be? Let me grab my armor chart. Give me a second. One of the pages, I always forget. It's right in one of these 4 or 5 pages here. Carrying capacity of animal. That's encumbrance. Nobody cares about encumbrance. Okay. So let's say that you decide you want to wear a certain type of armor. I want to begin by saying in 2nd edition, clerics can't wear any armor. Just like a wizard, they only wear robes. Now that we've dabbled in 5th, I've decided to loosen up on that a little bit. And some clerics may wear padded armor, which is basically extra cloth. And there's a couple that I'm going to allow leather. Druids specifically, who wouldn't wear cloth. But they can never wear above that. Part of the whole clerical magic thing. Just like a wizard could slap on some plate mail, but he can't cast a spell. Clerics still have some of the same limitations. There's no crossbows for wizards. Warlocks also don't exist in 2nd edition, and tieflings are not a standard character class. They're just a monster, but you can convert almost any monster into a character class if your DM will let you, and you work with them on trying to make it reasonable. There's also no Dragonborn, which I'm personally a big fan of, because I don't like Dragonborn. There's also no... the guys who do the other robot stuff, the steampunk guys. It starts with an A. I want to say alchemist, but that's not the word. You know what I mean, though. There's none of them. Because, again, that's where we get that line between magic and technology, right? I am starting to loosen on that a little bit. A class like that, but nerfed a little bit, I might be okay with doing. Still not a fan of Dragonborn. So there's a chart. If you have no armor, your armor class is 10. That's the worst it can possibly be. If you have a shield lowers your armor class by 1. That's what it does. This is not magical armor. Regular armor. Okay? Leather padded armor drops it to 8. Leather padded armor and a shield is 7. Architect? Is it architect? It's 5th edition class where you can where they wear the metal goggles and they can make robots and shit. I can't think of the name. I'm sorry, I'm swearing a lot here today too. It's slipping out of my head, but I can't think of the name of it. It's a 5th edition class. But if you're wearing full plate mail and a shield, your armor class is 0. Right? So the best armor can get you is to 0. If you have, like I said, leather armor, it makes you an 8. If you have a leather armor plus 1, takes you to 8 like normal, and 1 lower than that. Make sense? So the pluses then take it down further. So Artificer, there it is. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That's the one. So let's just say I'm walking around wearing chainmail plus 3. I can look at my chart. Chainmail takes me to 5. If I get 3 more on top of that, that makes my armor class 2 because of my magical chainmail. I have a shield, it makes it 1. If it's a shield plus 1, now I'm at 0. You can see how you could get to -10, right? If I got full plate mail plus 5, that automatically puts me at -4. You give me a shield with plus 5, I'm at -9. You throw a ring of defense on me or magic protection, I'm now at -10. So it's possible. You're not going to find all that stuff early on, and a lot of classes can't wear plate mail even if they want to. But that's how armor classes work. Now, why is it that way? What the hell is Thaco? So Thaco is your chance to hit something. You do, yes. Yes. Oh my God, I don't have the thing up again. Yes, you do. So that's where defense adjustment comes in. Yes. So defense adjustment would go on top of that. If your dexterity is high enough, then yes, you do get a bonus from your dexterity. 100%. Yes. So for rogues who don't wear a lot of armor but have a high dexterity, that's how they survive. Yes. Thank you for pointing that out, Lex. That is 100% correct. You do get the defense adjustment. There are other ways too. Said magic stuff, different gear. If you find bracers of defense 6, that means putting them on makes you armor class 6. Anything else you wear that's armor that would get you to 6 or higher doesn't really affect you. But if you add armor plus something, you still get to add those pluses. Throwing that out there. Thaco is your chance to hit. Okay? And yes, I know you were worried. There is a chart. So, you have to roll over your Thaco to hit someone on a 20-sided dice. Your Thaco, base Thaco at level 1 for everybody is 20. So, feasibly, that means I have to roll a 20 or above to hit somebody. You don't like the 100%, the percentage things for strength? I agree. I feel that's a bit of a weakness. I almost always jump them directly from 18 to 19 and skip the percentages. I agree with you. He's saying that for warriors with strength, you can get, there's 18 and then there's 18 up to a percentage. And the percentage you have gives you incremental increases. I almost always go straight from 18 to 19. It's just easier. Or 18 to 18.5 and then to 19. But I don't do each individual percentage. It's silly. I agree with you. But let's just say again, you are a level 1 warrior. Right? Your Thaco is 20. So I need a 20 to hit that guy with my sword. Here's where armor class comes in. I have to ask you, what is your armor class? You say 6. I subtract that number from my Thaco. So now I need a 14 or above to hit you. That's my chance to hit you. Yeah, let's say my Thaco, maybe I'm a few levels higher. My Thaco is 15. You come at me and I say, what's your armor class? You say -2. I have to add that. Now, why is -2 adding? It's usually easier to remember that way, but it's not. -2 and +4, that's actually the modifier. So, hypothetically, if I have -2, you have to subtract 2 from whatever you roll. It works out to be the exact same thing. But I'll explain to you why I do it this way. Because in the long run, it's easier for folks. I promise. So again, I have, let's go to the same situation, right? I have a 15 Thaco. I'm trying to fight a baby dragon that's got a -2. I got to add that, so that means I need a 17. But I'm specialized in my sword. So I get a +1 to hit. Chow, now I need a 16. I also am pretty strong. I get a +2 to hit with that. Now I need 15. See where I'm going with this? So then my perks go in. So here's how we do it on a character sheet. A natural 20 is always a success, with minor exceptions. And a 1 is always a failure, with minor exceptions. Always an exception to every situation. You were like, I'm going to use my regular quarterstaff to hit this god. No. No, you don't even get to roll. No, stop wasting my time. But, doesn't matter. Here's a dragon, I'm hitting him with a dagger. Man, anybody can get a lucky shot. Right? Anybody can get a lucky shot and just happen to stab you in a tendon or something that has an effect you weren't expecting. I just happened to get you between scales. Just lucked out with my natural 20 and stabbed you between scales and hit a little bit of flesh. You know what I mean? There's always that chance. So Thaco lowers as you level up. How much it lowers and how often depends on your class. A warrior's Thaco drops by 1 every 3 levels. I'm sorry, drops by 1 every level. So by level 5, your Thaco's 15, right? Because the warrior's just getting better. Again, this is one of the perks, the big perks of a warrior, because they don't get all the spells and the special abilities and all that stuff. So it makes it easier for me to hit you with things every time I get a level. Wizards lose 1 every 3 levels. Wizards Thaco do not go down much. Wizards are not melee fighters, nor should they ever be. Rogues lose 1, it lowers by 1 every 2 levels, and priests, it drops by 2 every 3 levels. Is that confusing? Yes. But remember, you only have to worry about your class. And there's a chart. It will tell you, I'm a priest at level 5, my Thaco is 18. No looking it up, it's right there. So here's how we're going to put this on our character sheet, okay? Here's my weapon slot. You guys can see my little wiggly arrow there, hopefully, right? So I'm going to write down Warhammer. That's the weapon I can use. I'm a priest, so I don't specialize, but I do have a point in it, so I don't have a negatives. So my normal Thaco at level 1 is a 20. Okay? Number of attacks, 1. Because I'm not a warrior, and it's not a ranged weapon that might give me more attacks. There are a few melee ones that can give you a little bit more, but not many. You're pretty much 99% of the time 1 attack if you're not a wizard. Or warrior, I'm sorry. Or you don't have something magical or special that increases that. Wizards can cast spells on you that might give you more attacks. Spells of speed, potions of speed, things of that nature. So weapon, number of attacks, 1. If I was a warrior and I was specialized, that would be 3 every 2. 3/2. Lucky thing I'm seeing right now is that I'm going to build a corkboard just to pin the sheets I need behind my screen. The best thing about a DM screen, 2nd edition, all these charts are on it. Every 2nd edition DM screen has every one of these things ready to go. In fact, I might be able to grab mine. Give me 1 second. I'm sure I've got one over here. I haven't pulled it out in a while. I rarely use a DM screen, mostly because I'm sitting on the opposite side of the room. Here's an old 2nd edition Dungeon Master screen I got for $2. Let me space this out a little bit more. That's the inside of my DM screen. Every single one of the charts we've talked about, with the exception of like basic skills, because I can pull those up. Here's your saving throws, turning undead, thief average abilities. Every weapon in the 2nd edition with its specs doesn't have the prices, but it does say what damage it does, missile weapons, encounter reactions. I don't use that much. Surprise modifiers. Modifiers to initiative, armor class ratings, calculated Thacos, creature Thacos, morale, situational. Some of these things I don't use. On the back, some of the ones that the characters more commonly use, turning undead, punching and wrestling. You know, if you're using an actual melee, you roll an attack roll. What number you roll to hit also determines what you use. So let's say you're a melee fighter and you're going to attack someone without weapons. Unarmed combat, right? You roll out your Thaco, maybe you got a little plus because you're strong, whatever the case. You have to roll a 15 to hit this dude. And you roll a 17. Well, not only did you hit them with a kidney punch that did 1 damage, a 5% chance to knock them out. 20, haymaker, 2%, 10% chance to knock him out. Now, the odd, if your Thaco's so low, you're later in the game, where you hit him with a 3, hook, 2 damage, 12%. Because if you can hit with a low number, you're pretty strong at that point. So you're doing quite a bit of damage. So, again, all of the stuff, while it's all chart-based, it's all on your DM screen. Any DM screen has all of that in there. Wrestling. Yes, wrestling is on the same chart, for the record. Punching and wrestling results. So instead of punching, you're using wrestling. Bear hug, arm twist, kick, trip, elbow smash, arm lock, leg twist, leg lock. It's literally a whole bunch of different things. Gouge, that's an eyeball. Elbow smash. So as a DM, I have all this here right in handy, 99% of it. right there where I'm ready to go. So, finishing this up, because we're actually getting close to the end of the episode here. This one here, so again, looking here, what we're going to do is we're going to write our weapon, number of attacks. Now here, what we're going to put is a little dash, a backslash. So dash, a little line, backslash, little line, backslash, little line, backslash, little line. We want 4 little lines. That's 4 modifiers. Okay? The last 2 is if you have a magical weapon. If this is a Warhammer +2, then the last 2 will be +2, +2. +2 to attack, and a +2 to damage. The first 2 are your +2 attack and +2 damage from every other source. I've got a warrior who has a +1, +2. He gets an extra +2 to hit because he's so strong, and a +3 to damage. That means I got a +3, +4. So here I would put a +3, +4. I then take the +3 from attack, the +2 from the attack of my sword. That makes 5. My Thaco is 20. That means my adjusted Thaco for that weapon is 15. I write it right there. That means I never have to calculate that again, unless I get a new weapon. So you've only ever got to calculate that once. So from now on, when I walk up and you're in a fight, and you're saying, I'm going to hit him with my Warhammer, say, okay, what's his armor class? I say a 5. You don't look at your base Thaco. You look at what your Warhammer's Thaco is. With all those perks, it's a 15. Subtract that 5 from it. Now it's only 10. You have to roll 10 or above to hit me with that hammer. So every weapon you have listed here, you'll have the adjusted Thaco already calculated with all of your pluses for damage and hit from all your sources. You do that when you get the weapon once. Then you never have to touch it again, unless you, of course, lose that weapon, get a better weapon, that type of thing, right? Or some weird occurrence happens and you manage to level up your strength. Well, now I get to do 1 extra point of damage. Let me adjust that on each one of my things and adjust that. Normally, where it says range, that's where we write the added plus damage. So if I have +1 to hit here and +2 because it's sword, I'll write a little +3 in range, so I know whatever I roll for damage, I add a +3 to it. Because we don't worry about range, weight, size, type, or speed. They're in the book. Range, common sense. Weight, don't care. We're using common sense. Size, again, don't care. Common sense. You're not carrying around 10 pole arms. Type, that you should just know. There are 3. Slashing, piercing, and blunt. A quarterstaff is a blunt weapon. Sword can be a slashing or a piercing, depending on what type of sword it is. Technically, it can be both. A thrown dagger is a piercing. Melee dagger is a slashing. Right? An axe is a slashing. So that can matter in a situation where you're fighting a skeleton and blunt weapons do full damage, slashing and piercing only do half. You stab a skeleton, you're not really hitting anything. You might chip a bone, but you're not really doing anything. So there are some monsters and creatures where specific type of, at the same time, you have your sword and I have my quarterstaff and we both hit the dragon. Right? That's like somebody shoving a nail in my foot. Ow, that sword hurt. Or somebody hit me with a stick this big on my foot. I'm not going to be that impressed. So, the blunt may do less against something of that nature. The damage depends on the size. So there's small and medium does 1 set of damage, and then large. And sometimes your weapon does more damage against large than it does small. And it can depend on the type of weapon you have. A longsword is a great example. The implication is if I get a good slash on you, I'm cutting a bigger hole. Or I'm going deeper. Right? With a small person, I can only get so much of a slash. You're smaller, you're harder to hit, things of that nature. At the same time, some things smaller would do better. If I stab you with a dagger and you're smaller, I just percentage-wise made a bigger hole percentage of your body than I would if you were a giant. So a little person getting stabbed, you're doing more damage ratio-wise to the artery that you're hitting. The difference between getting a dagger, if you're a hill giant, a needle. That's what that's like to them, right? So That's the other thing you may want to know. Oh, you're coming against a hill giant. It's a large creature. I shouldn't have to tell you that, but you might. Come across an ogre, large creature. Gnoll, man size. Goblin, small to man size. You know what I mean? But there's some mid-range stuff that could depend. You find a were creature. All right. So werewolf, man size. Bear, potentially bigger than that. So as a DM, that's something information you shouldn't have to ask. As the DM, I should provide that to you. You come across a bear, it's a large type werebear, it's a large type creature. What do you want to do? What's its armor class? 5. Cool. I take that from my advanced Thaco. And then speed is technically an initiative modifier. I don't do that. I use group initiative. And it's optional. And I think this is probably the same in 5th. Normally, your party has a party order. If you're walking single file, this is the order of your party. 99% of the time, that's the same order people are going to roll their attacks in. With a couple exceptions. If you've got an archer in the back who has the ability to fire one arrow before you ever get into melee, he may get to shoot an arrow over top of everybody else. But most of the time, that's the order. Unless you're attacked from behind. And then you have reverse party order. Is why you have usually a strong person at the front, strong person at the back, and your wizard, the squishy, as well as your healer in the middle. So I roll a 10-sided for the monsters. You roll a 10-sided for the party. Whoever has the lowest number, your group gets to go first via party order. Unless you have something extra special that lets you get to go first. The most common example I could give of that, Darsh's boots. Dandy's always up front because she's the rogue. But if Darsh pops his boots off, he will hit melee, literally get to them before anybody else does. So that's the most common use, that he will get to use that before initiative really even kicks in. Because he'll zoom in. None of the other ones have even gotten to melee with the rest of the party yet. So he enters melee a round earlier. And gets an extra attack because most of them don't know we can do that. But the Thaco thing throws people off a little bit, especially when you start adding the modifiers. The important thing to remember is you just calculate it once ahead of time so you know what your adjusted Thaco is for that weapon. The only thing you ever have to do from that point on is ask your DM the armor class and subtract that number from your adjusted Thaco. Adjusted Thaco is 14, and I say 6. You need an 8 to hit. If your adjusted Thaco is 12 and I have a -3, you need a 15 to hit. Negatives technically get added. And that throws people off, and I know that because that's the way I say it. Technically, with a -3 or -2 armor class, you have to subtract 2 from whatever you roll, making it harder to get over the number, is the mentality there. But the non-weapon proficiency we talked about earlier, again, they have the same type of concept, right? Like when I was mentioning those, they had skills like charioteering, dexterity +2. So I have to do a dexterity check, but I got to add 2 to whatever I roll, but I want to get under. That's not very helpful. Whereas Boyer Fletcher, dexterity -1, sweet, I want to roll under my dexterity. Getting to subtract 1 from whatever I roll makes that better. So when it comes to ability modifiers and armor class, negatives are technically better because that's a number your enemy has to subtract from their roll. So that's the basics of creating a second edition character. That's the minor stuff that you would need to get started and get going. There's, of course, special abilities down here. Races and classes are still done. There's abilities that they have in 2nd that they don't appear to have in 5th. And 5th has some they don't in 2nd. The races and classes come with that. How we do spells and such is a little different. We'll talk about that down the road. I've talked about it a few times already today and in the past, but I can dedicate an episode purely to spell casting if enough people want to see that. But special abilities can be all sorts of things, right? That's where thieves would write down their skills. Thieves start with, there's 9 thief skills. Find and remove traps, pick locks, pickpocket. What else is there? Read or comprehend language, climbing, hide in shadows, move silently, stuff like that. And then they, based on their score, would start at basically their race, In class, they're given a number. Or their class, like, here's what you get. You start with 10 in everything and 60 in climb walls. Always works that way. And then because of your race, maybe you're a halfling, you get to add 5% to hide in shadows and move silently. You do that. But you want to wear leather armor. Means you get a negative in move silently, that type of thing. So you calculate those out. You say, okay, this is what my stats are. And then you get 60 points to put wherever you want. But you can't put more than 30 in a specific spot. Every time you level, you get 30 more points that you can distribute across them wherever you want, but you can't put more than 15 in a specific skill. And the highest you can ever get a skill is 95%. So you can have a 95% find and remove traps and a 10% pickpockets if you haven't been putting points in there. And that's your percentage chance of success. But the highest you can ever get is 95%. Because it doesn't matter how good you are, there's always the chance you will fail. No one's perfect. Except for me and maybe Keanu. I say maybe for Keanu because Keanu would never consider himself. I don't want to insult him by telling him he's wrong. Which I can't do. Perfect. But yeah, so thieves, that's an example of thief skills, right? And then there's charts on here for when you get to a certain level. Everybody at 9th level starts to attract followers. What type of followers can depend on the chart. For we were looking at her ranger, Ashley's ranger, and I roll for it, and it can be everything from human warriors to elven wizards to bears. A dryad shows up, some centaurs, all sorts of weird stuff capable for druids and rangers. And for warriors, it's normally going to be other type of warriors, knights, paladins, the type of people Mercy attract. For Artemis, paladins, clerics, right? And again, even warriors of the Templar. I think I'd like to make a specific warrior class for Templar that comes with a couple of additional abilities, but maybe a little bit of negatives as well. Templars are such a big deal in Merged Worlds that I think that they would be a fun class to play. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be with a cleric. Could be. But you could be doing something for the church. Or you could be a Templar of healing. And you're just out fighting evil and the darkness and things that are anti-healing, right? Templars doesn't necessarily mean a guard in the temple. Maybe you started that way, right? You look at Lucas, right? He was a Templar of evil beforehand, and boy, he went out and killed a lot of people. So there's things like that. So Templars could be things, and at the same time, you may be asked to escort a cleric somewhere. What a great plot hook that would be. You are a Templar of the cleric of the God of Light. The temple in your area, because they know how successful you've been on these earlier adventures, has asked that you escort these 3 young clerics to a small town hundreds of miles away where clerics are needed. But they need some protection because there's been some bad stuff going on and the church is being blamed for some of it. So you have to worry about that. Now you get sucked into a plot that is trying to blame the church because it's actually evil clerics or something, and they're trying to kill your clerics to not mess up their plans. And that's a whole plot hook I came up with in 3 seconds, but that would be easy to do for a Templar-like character, because now you're defending and helping the needs of the church and the clerics and so on and so forth. It'd be an awesome hook to get a Templar who falls in love with a cleric and vice versa, right? And so they're traveling together all the time, right? Maybe they get perks for that. Hang on 1 second. Spider. I don't need any drow learning my secrets. But yeah, as a Templar type class, I'd like to write that out because I think that Templars would have some very minor abilities. I would think a Templar would have some form of healing or at least self-healing. If you're a Templar of healing. And on my world, I'd have to write out what that ability would be, and I'd keep them pretty across the board, but what that ability would be depending on the Templar you are. But that doesn't mean you can't be a Templar of light and travel with a bunch of something else. Or you could be a Templar of the God of the Sea and you start chilling out on one of Darsh's boats, as an example, right? Because there's a cleric that lives on his boat. And you're like, hey, yeah, I'm traveling the sea, that type of thing. Well, technically, he'd be an evil Templar, but that just is an example, right? But I think Templar would be a character class that I would like to roll out as a playable character. And for race, I would like to roll out tribals, which are basically humans, but that's what Tevin is. But because of the way their lives, because they're very much based on a Native American style character. I say tribal because there's no America, obviously. But it's very themed off of that, with the style of dress, belief systems, as well as just the different values that they had and such. I really wanted something that represented that, and I'd like to maybe make that as a playable human variation, where you could play that as one of multiple classes. That maybe you get a couple perks or extra skills like move silently and such, things like that. Tevin would have that, you know what I mean? He's trained originally to be a warrior of them, so something along those lines. So that's two that I've thought about creating out myself, but maybe release them as a optional. Get up all the specs, write it out, and put it online for anybody else who'd like to use it. Well, anyways, I've talked your ears off for 2 hours and 22 minutes about this. Hopefully, me rapping about 2nd edition wasn't boring to you. I've talked a lot about why I like 2nd. I thought it was important that maybe I show you why. I just feel 2nd edition has a lot more options for straight-up customization. Just in the way that it's designed. It's designed so that we have different stuff. You know, we don't have the same weapons, skills. And then when it comes, there's nothing about history. Nothing about your background. 100%, I need you to make one of your own. I'd love to hear your background. What's your story? Just remember, not everybody's a long-lost prince. You know, try not to reach too far to the stars. But, man, come at me with a background story, and we'll make it happen, right? Jim's monk, the gnomes that at the town that he was in were all slaughtered. He was a baby and hidden. Some monks found him and didn't know what else to do, so they took him with them, kind of a thing. Was the original draw of that character. That's why he's a gnome monk in a monastery that didn't have a lot of gnomes in it. So, that's his background. But it doesn't determine what weapons or skills and such he has. That's determined by his class and whatever proficiencies and non-weapon proficiencies. So there's some options. There is no monk in 2nd edition, traditionally. So for him and for my wife, who's about to roll a tiefling, also not in there, I'm going to have to work a 2nd edition version of those out. I just have to figure. All right, everybody. I've been blowing your ears up for 2.5 hours. I'm going to call this a day. Thank you very much for coming and letting me hang out with you again for another Behind the Dice episode. This episode was a recommendation for some in the community. If there's something I've talked about in D&D or something I haven't but you'd like me to, my take on something, how does it work in 2nd, how would you do it this way, something you'd like to see, then, I'd love to hear it. You know what I mean? Throw it at me. Leave it in a comment. You know what I mean? It would be cool to do that. One moment while I remove something stupid. But yeah, come by, hang out. If you got ideas or things you'd like to see, or if you'd like me to take comments and stuff, you got questions, or maybe about your do an AMA style one where you're a DM or a player and you'd like suggestions or help coming up with a character or coming up with a story, building your own world. I'd be happy to do something like that as well. Give me your ideas for what you'd like to see for this series. I have a lot of other ideas, but I definitely want to give you guys the kind of stuff you're looking for. Now, tomorrow night, I am back over on Twitch from 9:30 p.m. Eastern till 1 a.m. Tomorrow, we're doing a community Jackbox night. If you want to come and play Jackbox, you totally should. Open to everyone. That's on Twitch tomorrow. Next Thursday is Mergedworlds episode, and I cannot stress enough how important the next episode of Mergedworlds is going to be. The next episode of Mergedworlds is going to hit the ground running, and I'm going to be introducing what's going to be the basic concept / storyline for a while. Basic of what all the next generation is based on. So if you're a fan and you can, really recommend coming by. But if not, definitely check it out. I'll get it up on iTunes and Spotify as quickly as I can. If you have an iTunes or a Spotify and you haven't already, man, I would adore you if you wouldn't mind swinging to iTunes and Spotify and just giving the podcast a follow. If you want to rate it, give it some stars or give it a review. That really, really helps too. But even just following it really helps out more. It's free. You don't have to pay anything for that. I would really appreciate it if you don't mind taking the minute or two to do that. Lex says, I planned a one-shot based on a circus. My main inspiration is Cirque du Soleil. Act idea for the players. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, anybody wants to bounce stuff off me or even, hey, this is what I'd like to do. How do you think it'll go? Hit me up. Not that I'm saying I'm great, but I'm always happy to give an opinion. Lord knows I'm opinionated. But I'm going to call this a day. You folks have yourselves a wonderful night, and hopefully I will see you again very soon, okay? Thank you very much for coming. I really do appreciate you.